Hello, everybody. Now, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has reportedly called for voluntary migration of Palestinians living in Gaza. Now, this is in a report that I've read by Middle East Monitor, which I'll put a link to below, and that is quoting some other reports in some Hebrew outlets, Hebrew language outlets in Israel, like Hayom Daily. And what it says is that in a closed session, this was reportedly comments from Netanyahu in a closed session of the Likud party's MPs, that they were discussing what to do with Gazans. And he put forward this idea for voluntary migration, and also said, reported to have said, the problem with this is the countries that are going to absorb the Palestinians living in Gaza. Well, the thing is, there shouldn't be any need for mass migration from Gaza to other countries, because Israel should not be carpet bombing and ethnically cleansing Gaza and the Gaza Strip, which they are doing in an act of collective punishment. Now, I know what happened on the 7th of October. Hamas essentially initiated an act of war against Israel, and 1,200 people were killed. Many of them actually, now we know, were killed by IDF forces in Apache helicopters, shooting indiscriminately in both. After the Nova Festival was attacked by Hamas, the IDF went up and killed Hamas and the festival goers indiscriminately, which is a tragedy, of course, terrible thing. But what they're doing now is even worse. They've killed 20,000 Palestinians, almost all of them innocent, completely innocent. Half of them children, 8,000 children, many of them Christian. They've bombed and shot at churches in Gaza. There's also settler violence increasing in the West Bank against Palestinians who live there on the other side of the occupied territories, away from Gaza. So this should not be happening, and we shouldn't even be entertaining the idea that this is somehow acceptable, that there is collective punishment with tens of thousands of people being killed, over 50,000 people injured in retaliation. And then, of course, we know that some people in the Israeli government have expressed that Gaza should be flattened, turned into glass, turned into a parking lot, and to use an American word. And the people then pushed from the north to the south, and from the south into Egypt, and then away, so Israel can take full control of that land, which will then be ethnically cleansed. This is what is happening in real time. And I get a lot of comments from people who are unhappy that I'm actually just telling it like it is. And I've always said, I'm not on anybody's side. I just want people to not be killed, and for this to stop happening, for some reasonableness to come back. And it's got to start with somebody. But it's not going to start with this continuing ethnic cleansing going on in Gaza. And the people there are going to be dispersed, and then there's going to be another migration crisis. And, what has disturbed me quite a lot with this whole episode is people on the right are salivating at the bombing of Gazans. And some people who are against migration, mass migration, are actually gone over to Israel in a flak jacket, and they're pretending to be reporting on how the situation is going, and cheering on the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, the demolition, the destruction of hundreds of thousands of people's homes, and they're already in a very desperate situation in essentially one of the most densely populated parts of the world with no economy of its own, because they're not allowed an economy because Israel controls all of the borders and the goods that go in and out, and they're being squeezed, like a syringe. All the people are being pushed further and further into a smaller area, which is more and more densely populated. They're cutting off water, they've cut off electricity to the people that live there. Well, their homes are gone. You've seen pictures of, whole towns and refugee camps just being flattened. This is completely disproportionate to what happened on the 7th of October. I'm not saying that wasn't terrible. It was. I've always said that. But, two wrongs don't make a right. And if this continues, there's going to be another migration crisis. And it looks like, Netanyahu and the Likud party, the people in the Israeli government, are just, assuming that this is what's going to happen eventually. So we can see how this is going to play out. And this will mean, if they get their way, 2.2 million Gazans, well, not 2.2 million, because they're going to kill about 100,000 of them, 2.1 million maybe Gazans will be ejected. But he's talking about it being voluntary. Well, it's not voluntary if you bomb people's houses, cut off their water, cut off their energy, and then say, well, you can leave. Well, that's not a choice. That's not voluntary. You've destroyed their lives, their homes. There's nothing for them, not even water. So of course they're going to have to leave voluntarily, because you've forced them to do it because of what you've done to the place that they live. And this should not be happening. So, comment as you will. I know not everybody agrees with me, but I know some people do see that this is a horrible humanitarian situation, and just like me, want an end to the killing on both sides. But, the onus is now on the Netanyahu regime to stop it, because they've just gone totally crazy, and this needs to stop. I need to say that because this is the reality of it. Even on Christmas Day, the churches in Palestine, the Palestinian Christians, are speaking out for the people of Gaza. There's a few Palestinian Christians in Gaza, 2,000 or so, who are left there. But there are hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Christians living in the West Bank, and they're not as in imminent danger as the Christians are in Gaza. We saw last week Israeli snipers shot and killed a Christian mother and her daughter on the grounds of, I think it was the Holy Family Catholic Church in Gaza. Terrible, horrendous attack that was. But, listen to the Palestinian Christian churches who are calling for an end to, they say, genocide. Okay, I'm not using that word myself yet. Maybe I will in the future, but I'll certainly call it an ethnic cleansing. And, if this goes on, well, it will be. There you go.